And thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. It's an evening after the afternoon when the Electoral Commission held a major press conference to review the 2020 elections, 10 months after the elections was held. But fundamentally, it was a reaction to John Dramani Mahama, the NDC's flag bearer candidate in the 2020 elections. Amongst a host of accusations that he's leveled against the EC and its chairperson, the EC decided today to go public, to put forward their own facts on their own terms, but fundamentally challenge John Mahama to provide evidence to back his claim. But they've also called on the police tonight for the police to also investigate some of the claims. Let's go through what the EC's verdict is. Let's start with the EC's verdict on the 2020 elections. According to the EC, the 2020 elections were highly transparent, fair, credible, and inclusive. And they believe this has been endorsed globally, not only by themselves, but by international observers. We'll come into that very shortly. So those are the specifics. And then there are the accusations that they responded to, and there are a few of them. So this is John Dramani Mahama's claim and the EC's response. The first most important one that the EC isolated was this claim by John Mahama that there were thumb-printed ballot papers, 1 million of them, some of which ended up in ballot boxes that were used for the elections. Now, the EC says this is categorically false, and they honestly don't see why the former president was making this particular claim. Now, the EC gives the following reasons to back their false verdict on this claim. It says the process was transparent, so transparent that it is totally impossible for somebody to thumb-print extra ballot papers and put it in the ballot box. It says that is why this can be possible. Also because there are serial numbers on the ballot papers for each region and constituency. So you cannot put in the ballot boxes foreign materials. That's the Electoral Commission's position on the matter. Now, John Mahama had also claimed that the military influenced the declaration of results at some polling stations. The EC says that is categorically false as well. Why? Because nowhere did the military influence the declaration and announcement of results, according to the Electoral Commission, and that all results at the polling stations and collation centers were a true reflection of the will of the people. Only the people can elect their leaders, and no military person influenced that. John Mahama had also claimed, and this was all part of his tour recently across the country, that the 2020 elections is the worst elections in Ghana's history. The EC says that can be accurate, and that they refute these claims vehemently. The EC is absolutely emphatic that that's not possible. Why? Because of the points I've made earlier, about it being fair, transparent, all the pluses that they say the international monitoring organizations use in assessing the success of an election. Again, John Mahama had claimed that the EC is responsible for the violence that took place at Techiman. The EC says that cannot be further from the truth, because again, the Commission has stated that the violence was not caused as a result of the EC itself. And the staff had actually said that in Techiman, it was because the radio station had asked NDC supporters to go and guard the ballot boxes at a particular collation center. That is what led to the violence, the EC says. Another claim that John Mahama had put forward, that elections were fraudulent. The EC says, how can this be when you had an opportunity in court to adduce evidence to back this claim that you failed to? They mentioned Asiru Nkita, the General Secretary of the party, who, when given an opportunity to substantiate these allegations, said they were not in court to challenge the validity of the elections. And the EC says, well, if that is your position, how can you then claim that the elections that were held were fraudulent? Okay, now the few demands that the Electoral Commission themselves have made tonight, they're demanding John Mahama to provide the evidence to back all the claims, right? As I say, he either put the evidence up or simply keep quiet. And they're asking the police, because of the gravity of the allegations and its tendency to undermine the Electoral Commission, the police should investigate the matter and take it very seriously. Now, there was no issue, and this is the question about voting too. The EC goes on to provide some statistics to back their claim that it's not possible. There was no issue with overvoting at the 38,622 polling stations, except they say in Sabelugu, where they had one case of overvoting. So they admit that in Sabelugu there was an issue. Okay, this was at the press conference today they put forward. Now, also some key important data to pay attention to. The EC insists that 13.4 million persons who voted, more than 99.9% were verified through fingerprint or facial recognition biometric verification. Now, the point they're making here is for the NDC and Imani that had raised issues with why they were investing so much in new technology. They say this is what vindicates that expenditure because 99.9% of people were verified using the system that they bought, where manual verification was significantly reduced. So nationally, only 11,000 people were manually verified. And for them, this is the first time we've had such a small number of people being manually verified because the system really worked. Again, if you look at the cost, EC said this is the first time that as a country going into an election, they have saved this economy this much, $90 million. In fact, they put it in Ghanaian usually terms, more than 500 million cedis that the state was saved, according to the Electoral Commission. Because if you look at it, 2016, it cost $13.34 per voter. And then they reduced this in 2020, which is what you see here, to $7.70 per person. So this is a significant drop the EC put forward today. And this, they say, is the evidence of a very successful elections having been organized because of the fact that they save us money. Again, the commission was able to create additional 10,000 polling stations. Now, they made the savings in spite of creating 10,000 more polling stations, reducing the voting time from 10 to 12 minutes to 3 to 5 minutes. This is pretty historic, the EC has said today. The facts they say speak for themselves. And that is why the question the EC is asking tonight, in fact, they made the point that John Mahama is simply maligning the EC chairperson, the EC, and undermining the organization. Is that what really is happening? We'll speak to those who know. We'll speak to Kudeo just to get an independent view of this. It's a very important conversation that we just don't want to leave to the politicians to have, because I know civil society has been doing a lot of work in assessing the elections themselves. And so stay with me as we get into these vexed matters here on PM Express after the break. And thank you for joining us here on PM Express. My guest joining us via Zoom this evening is Dr. Kojo Asante, CDD, of course, also with Kudeo, joins us via Zoom. Dr. Asante, thank you for your time here on PM Express.
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers.
Always a delight to have you. Also joining me is Dr. Tokuno, Dr. Boamo Tokuno, who joins us. He's the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. We'll be joined shortly by the Director of Elections for the NPP as well. The Electoral Commission says they did a press conference today, and so they don't want to engage on the matter. They put forward their position on the matter, and so they are not available today for comment. But we'll definitely try and get them for a few more questions in the course of the week, so stay with us for that. But let's stay with the issues as the EC had put forward. Dr. Kujasan, let me start with you, because I know the Kodeo, CDD, had done some work already on this. In fact, I was part, together with you, at the review meeting in Adan. It was. The EC now has come forward. They laid out what their own verdict is. In fact, in that meeting, they did so. They talked about all the savings, but they've gone a bit further now in this very detailed press conference. Where do you stand on this debate? Still, we have 10 months after the elections. We still have a debate about the quality of the elections that we had in 2020. It appears that debate is still not settled somewhat. Where do you stand on that?
All right, thanks. And good evening again, and good evening to my fellow panelists. So I think that we have to acknowledge that there were a lot of very good things that happened in the election of 2020, considering that this election was conducted in the context of a pandemic that was raging at the time, with all the fears and worries and concerns. So the fact that the Electoral Commission was able to, pull it off in the way that it did has to be commended. The positives about the voting day, which followed a similar success in 2016, where we basically went through the voting day, without any, major city incidents. And that was the second time we've had, because the Electoral Commission, both in 2016, 2020, really worked very hard on the materials, the logistics, really in terms of the setup. Of course, adding 10,000 new polling stations helped reduce the time. In 2016, I think we added 8,000, if I recall, and another 10,000 really help improve the voting time. So they're very, very good things. There were innovations that the Electoral Commission introduced in 2020 in respect to queue management, in respect to sort of just providing real-time updates and informing citizens. And they did some very good things on the procurement side, and later on we'll come to that. But I think any assessment of the electoral process in 2020 have to address the challenges this was the second time in a row that we had, significant problems in the collation process and then the results management process. And I say that because in 2016, the election day went very well, and then we had problems later on in some places in the collation, and then later on in the results management. So our assessment and our safari when we were all there was that if there was any place we had to look at was what happens after the voting polls are closed. That is where we have to put our energies, because we are very close in terms of our ability to run an almost incident-free election. But we still had to, this endpoint between the collation and the results announcement, that's where we needed to work on. And you will see in the recommendations that were made that a lot of work and proposals have been put on the table around that.
So that's there are a few specifics that the EC put out today. They score themselves, this is the best elections that they believe Ghana has ever done. And they use a few parameters. If you look at the cost, they talk about a reduction of the cost from what it used to be when, of course, the EC, to all the way to $7.07 per voter, which is what they put out today. And then they also emphasize the very important point about the international observer missions and what they have said. The length of time it took one person to register, they reduced it in the region of 10 minutes to 3 to 5 minutes. Is there an objective set of criteria used to assess an election? So I'm an election observer. I want to get to a place where there's an objective way of looking at this, because that has always been a debate. What's the best way of assessing the success and free and fairness of an election?
Well, you have to definitely go over the entire electoral process. So it's not just when we go and vote on election day. You start all the way from voter registration to campaigning to nomination to all of those kinds of processes. And of course, the voting day, what happens in terms of the collation process and the results announcement, and sometimes even post-election adjudication and so on and so forth. So it's a long process, and there's no sort of magic bullet. Whoever computes these things and say, I'm scoring you 80%, bringing in a lot of variables and looking at various processes to come to that conclusion. On the issue of expenditure, yes, Ghana's election, per voter has always been very, very high. I think it was $12, which was really high in Africa. And the EC has made this claim that it's reduced it to $7.
Yeah.
I want to see the financials because, there was the argument about whether we should buy new equipment and all of those kinds of things, whether we could have used our old equipment and so on. The EC insisted that those old equipment was obsolete. It wouldn't really do the work, and there were already concerns and all of that stuff. So I would like, if you had an audited accounts and maybe we can all see what was spent on, then we'll know this, this is value for money. But any kind of reduction from 2016, when we spent almost $1 billion Ghana cedis on our elections, I think is welcome. And having to do that in a pandemic is also welcome. But at least really to sort of do the assessment, you really need to see the financial. So it is encouraging because I think the target that the EC has set itself is $5 per voter. And I know that the use of open competitive bidding, particularly for PPEs, was something that helped because it really reduced the prices that was available for the EC. So you have to look at all the parameters. As I said, if you look at logistics, for the first time, I think a lot of materials went way ahead of time. We had a few days. There were even cases where because they got there too early, there was some commotion as to whether there was somebody was playing a game or something like that. But that helped, and material, we didn't have any major incidents of shortages of material and so on. So the election day, as I said, in terms of if you look at all the processes, it was extremely efficient. The issue was, of course, the collation process and then the resource management, which, I can talk a lot about what exactly went wrong and why we should try and fix that. If we can fix that, for me, we would have, we will really be doing well in terms of how we manage our elections.
Yeah, stay with me, Doc. Let me come to Tokono. Let's start with one of the variables the EC mentioned today, which is the cost of the elections. The EC says in 2016 it was $13.34. In 2020, which this current EC's administration supervised, they reduced it to $7.70. This is good news, saving the country a lot of money. Saving the country 90 million.
Well, Evans, I think that the Electoral Commission is engaged in a lot of, in recent times, if you want, pedestrian, propaganda to kind of whitewash what I call a broken image of an electoral body. And the reason why I'm saying that is that this press conference is one of those typical examples of needless waste of state resources. And I can assure you that this particular press conference would have cost the government tens of thousands of Ghana cedis.
It's a press conference.
Then live coverage, when you do live coverage on JoyNews, I know how much you take. It's a lot of money, you understand. And I know this was covered live across several networks. What exactly was the Electoral Commission trying to put out? Save the defects in what they have put out. And last time I spoke to you about Jim Mensah's analysis that we spent $7.7 per head in the elections. It is absolutely not possible. Now, this is how you may calculate a per capita expenditure on those who participated in the elections. According to their records, 13.9 million people registered. Save all the other, tens that are after the 13.9 million. So let's use 13.9 million. If you run simple proportions and you multiply by the 7.7 million, what Jim Mensah is telling us is that she spent 107,030,000 on the elections. That is palpable falsehood.
Dollars.
Yes, dollars.
Yeah.
107,030,000.
Yeah.
You understand? That cannot be the case.
Why?
You and I were in this country when they sent 1.8 billion Ghana cedi to Parliament. Parliament pruned it down, gave them 1.3 billion for the entire processes, including the registration exercise. Indeed, the registration exercise alone, according to their own figures, is almost 500 million Ghana cedi. If you do these calculations with the 13.9 million, which were all released to the Electoral Commission to run the electoral process from beginning to the end, bear in mind that the elections is not what happens on the D-Day. It includes printing on ballot papers, the logistics that are deployed, how to transport them, getting the registration done within that space of period. So that is 1.3 billion. If you divide 1.3 billion by 13.9 million people who voted in the elections, the per capita cost of the elections is $93.5. $93.5. That compares nowhere to the 13 point. To
be fair to their indicative amounts, I mean, what they applied, what they were given, what they actually spent, they can be different. There's public knowledge of what they have applied.
Worst case scenario.
What was given to them, and what they actually spent.
So worst case scenario. Let's take the worst case scenario. Let's take 1 billion. So 300 million is off the 1.3 billion. 300 million is off. If you use 1 billion to do your calculations, you are getting close to about 78 dollars per head per capita in the election. So what kind of analysis is this? Who are they deceiving? We were all in this country. We know how you put the various processes in place. We discussed some of the cost on radio. So you and I knew the cost. We knew how much Parliament released. Let's assume that they didn't use all. But I am very sure they used more than 1 billion in that elections.
You can't be.
Yes, certainly I can be, because the registration alone, according to them, is over 400 million Ghana cedi. So certainly you are going to go beyond a billion. And if you divide that by the 13.9 million people who voted, there's no way your per capita expenditure in the elections will be $7.7. Absolutely not correct. Totally defective. Now let's put that aside. Let's look at some of the claims in the press conference.
No, but they were responding to your claims.
No, they responded with counter claims. That's not the case. So we can respond to their claims as well. So they have made the claim that this election was fair, transparent, it was credible. And who is giving that indication? What constitutes a fair, transparent, and credible election?
To be fair, they are not the only group that has said that. The EU Observer Mission has said that.
I myself
said that.
You and myself, we've been in this studio.
Yes,
we've broken down the EU report.
That. It doesn't matter, yes, but they have said that.
And
it's a very credible report.
And as the policeman during the COVID time said, it has fallen flat. So we have dealt with
but
that.
That's according to you.
But no, we have dealt with that.
Just to make that point.
Let's not recount that. Let not the Electoral Commission go and seek credibility from EU. The credibility of the elections can best be judged by Ghanaians who participated in the elections. You and I were in the elections. We saw what happened. From beginning to the end. But
could they also monitor the election?
Evans, from beginning to the end, every single step of the way, it was fraught with complete open bias, blatant bias.
Where's the evidence of that?
To the extent, it got so worse, Evans, to the extent that you have Dr. Bosman, who addressed the press conference, the deputy chairperson of the Electoral Commission, indicate on live radio that one major stakeholder in the election, which is the NDC, is an existential threat to the democracy of this country, to peaceful elections. The verdict was called far before the election started. So, as to whether the election was fair, that one is done with. This is the worst election this is the worst election in the history of this country.
No, you
and I have voted in elections.
The EC said today, you said the credibility of elections has been decided. You went to court. That is the ultimate final destination to challenge this, and you lost. Having said that, the EC said today at the press conference that you had an opportunity in the court to provide the evidence to support your claim of fraudulent elections. When Asiru Nketia, your boss, was asked, he says you were not in court to challenge the validity of elections.
That is a very, very defective, completely de-alienating analysis on this matter. What we sent to court and what transpired in court, the least said about it, the better. I mean, it was completely shameful. You have an electoral commission that we have invested our capital in to run the affairs of our elections, refusing to enter the dock to answer questions respective of the work
you took the case to court. I mean, why should they help?
No, but you see, it's not about but we took the case to court to find some realities of the election, to bring some facts out. You understand? And that was exactly what we were doing. We were making demands of discoveries. It was denied. We brought pink sheets that we thought were overvoting. It was denied. So what do you expect us to do? Everything that we threw in there was denied. Unanimous FC. But save that, Evans. Save that. What we have said is that this is the worst election in the history of this country.
Based on?
A lot of irregularities happened. And one particular one is ballot stuffing. I recall I sat in this studio with you and decried the decision of the Electoral Commission to give contract to Ghana Publishing Company.
Well,
headed by, I sat in this studio and discussed with you, so I'm just recounting. And I decried why they would give printing of ballot papers to Ghana Publishing Company, headed by Let My Vote Count leader, Davis Asante, who is part of the elections team of the MPP. Subsequently, it unfolded that there were 2 occasions where they printed illegal ballot papers.
Which occasions
but for the vigilance of our agents.
Which occasions are these?
2 occasions. But for the vigilance of our agents, we wouldn't have found out, and we must there.
Which occasions are these?
I mean, I can't recall the date, but
you can't.
No, I can't. No, Evans. But you reported it. We went there. JoyNews reported.
What
at Ghana Publishing Company.
Well, what John Maham said, which is what the East was
Evans,
responding
I am building a point.
But it's important. Facts are important, and you know this, right? So the East was responding to a very specific allegation, which is what you brought up. John Maham said last week, more than 1 million extra ballot papers were printed.
I thought they want proof, so I was giving you the proof.
This is cool. I mean, I'm coming. Just to content, because I asked you for this, but I'm bringing the specifics. Which the EC claimed happened by mistake. I'm quoting here. But on the day of the election, some of the more than 1 million extra ballot papers had already been secretly tam-printed in favor of the MPP. Is that the case?
Yes, that is what I'm proving now. So you have the case where on 2 occasions we found out that they were printing ballot papers illegally. They were bent. But what we didn't know. But
that's not true.
No, what we didn't know.
Because those ballot papers were bent in the presence of everybody.
No,
transparent.
yes, that is what I'm saying. They were bent. I have not said that they were not bent. I said they were bent.
But there was no ulterior motive there, was it?
Evans, we caught them twice. We caught them twice, and it was bent.
Papers.
And will you
had explained that? Just for factual purposes. If you had taken your time, I would have ended this analysis and you have seen the factual purposes.
Yes, I'm giving you facts. I mean, these are things that happened. You reported on them. They were bent. We prevented that. But what we didn't know was that some of the ballot papers, whether the template was sent out and it was printed elsewhere, had been printed and it was in the hands of MPP people. 2 people were arrested at a so you reported on it. The ballot papers were already printed President Akufo-Addo with the EC stamp on it.
Was it in the ballot box?
I mean, I have not. I'm very clear in my words. Unless you are not hearing me, or you want to inquire. You want to inquire.
The word that the used was ballot stuffing.
Yes, ballot stuffing.
But that's not ballot stuffing.
So you have arrested people with their ballot sheets. Now, what it means, the next step is that you have just arrested some 2 people. There could be more. Now, how did we know that those ballots found their way into the ballot boxes? When you go to the polling station and the elections are done, they just pour the results from the ballot boxes. You do not have any time to check serial numbers of ballot papers that have been poured. If you have followed the election, you have reported the election before. Have you gone to any polling station where they pick the ballot paper and say serial number 1, 2, 3, 4? They voted for John Maham and put it down.
Nobody does that.
So no,
you check.
Dr. Bossman in this press conference, which you have just recounted, is saying that the reason why nobody can start ballots is that the ballot papers have serial numbers.
No, but
so how do you check serial numbers when you have poured them from
that
the ballot?
That is important sheets? Because post that polling station declaration, your agents have the right to scrutinize and challenge, which is what you ultimately did at the Supreme Court.
So what you have done, what the statement you have made right now, is out of the realm of the claims that we have made. So keep it there. Your statement is out of the realm. Because when they are stuck in the ballot boxes and they have been counted and it is recorded on the pink sheet, it is done.
But there's no evidence.
How many ballot boxes in this country were reopened and serial numbers were checked? So let's put that aside.
But there's no evidence that there was ballot stuffing.
I am telling. The evidence is what I'm giving you, and if you allow me, I would have crystallized, and I'm going to give you even further more compelling
It's conjecture.
Evidence. No, it's not conjecture.
Was any ballot box found with stuffed papers in it.
Why will you have to find ballot boxes with stuffed
But
papers?
without that, it's conjecture.
When you pour the ballot sheets down, you don't check whether this is valid or this is not valid. This has correct serial number or this is not correct serial number. What you do is that you check for the voting of who, the ballot papers.
We can't work with suspicions. You know this.
No, Evans, if you allow me, you are being too defensive on the side. You see, I am an elections player.
Yeah.
And I am a politician. And I am telling you how this thing was done. Perhaps maybe you will take advantage and pick it up. And next elections you follow. Now, if you look at the elections in 2020, if you put all the parliamentary votes together, all the parliamentary votes for MPP, CPP, NDC, whatever, put all the people who voted in parliamentary elections together, and put all the votes in the presidential together for all the aspirants, including the Kradonko, you would realize that the votes in the presidential surpasses that of the parliamentary by close to about 1 million votes.
And you didn't bring that in court?
But why? Evans, you saw what happened in court. You are talking like you are not in
No,
Ghana.
I'm just curious. You actually found this out.
And you
are saying it on national television when you had a court of compensation to say.
Is telling us is that there are some 1 million people who went to the polling station. They voted, they jumped the parliamentary, went to the presidential booth, voted for presidential and left. That is what they are telling us. You see, so Evans, there is a reality with this election that we are dealing with. We are political players. We have seen what happened in this election. Save the fact that we went to court. We were prevented from bringing all the facts and the evidence that we wanted to put in place.
How?
And it is...
Nobody prevented you.
Yes, I mean...
You didn't go there to challenge the validity of the elections.
That is not in debate anymore.
It's not.
You're working alone like a Liverpool fan. If you are debating...
I'm a United fan.
If you are debating that we were not prevented from, doing things in court.
But you were not.
You may be working alone because everybody saw the full glare of the cameras that we were prevented from making a case in court, in actual fact. In the closing remarks of Chachuti Kata, you said it. You heard him, what he said. You understand. You heard how he wrapped up. This is a case that cannot and should not be used as a yardstick to measure the credibility of the 2020 elections. You can't do that. You fail.
What yardstick are you using?
Let's go further and look at some of the indicators which would make the elections transparent and peaceful. This election, when it comes to peacefulness, when it comes to the sanctity of the elections, is the most mutilated in the history of this country. We had an election that 8 people lost their lives. I have not seen that. I have not seen any elections
don't blame that on electoral
commission. That was fully militarized.
You don't blame that on electoral commission.
I blame the electoral commission fully.
Because?
I verily blame the electoral commission fully.
Because?
Why? Did you see anybody shot at the Ablajo joint, the Cocoa and Beans joint, or the Kenke sellers joint here?
I don't see how that relates to this
Very good.
question.
Because there they sell Kenke and fish. They don't do elections. Those who were shot at polling stations where the Electoral Commission was conducting collation.
Yeah, is that the EC's responsibility?
Yes, it is the conduct of the returning officers that led to the revolt in most cases, which resulted in the shooting incidents. In some cases, there were no revolts at all.
No, but that can't be
Central, my constituency, Evans.
That can't be the Electoral Commission's...
Kuma Central, my constituency. There was no revolt at all. The Electoral Commission returning officer, a few things that they did, and people started complaining, that led to the gunshots, which caused the life of Ibrahim Abbas, who innocently...
We saw, let's be specific. Let's be specific. Let's go to Techiman, which is what Joe Mahama had said.
Techiman, only 3 people died in Techiman. 3 people died in Techiman.
Let's do
so you can't do only Techiman South.
But let's do specific. So in Techiman, we saw what happened. The EC officers were doing their jobs. Your members had issues with the way they were conducting themselves, and they are laid down procedures when you have issues at the collation center. We know the military guys were there. People were aggrieved outside. Guns were fired. Lives were lost. How do you blame that on the Electoral Commission that was following processes in declaring results?
The Electoral Commission returning officer on that day.
Yeah.
Perhaps maybe because the case is in court, I should be careful. But the Electoral Commission returning officer on that day was completely in some kind of unholy relationship with the MPP and the military. And we believe that what happened was pre-planned because it was clear to influence the verdict of the parliamentary
Assuming
election.
what you're saying is true.
And I am not ending there even
the
with
law
the truth.
lays down a process to
I am not
challenge
ending there with the truth. The truth is also in Takwa and Swahili, where visibly in the full glares of the numerous cameras, the military people sacked all NDC, coalition agents in the room. Actually, get the returning officer declare the results at gunpoint. Gunpoint.
Where's the evidence?
In the full glare of the cameras. With these military guns and here and there.
We had no evidence of that where people at gunpoint what the coalition officer was.
You do not have the evidence
to declare the results.
And that is why we have demanded a public inquiry into this matter. And we have made these demands since December.
Try this investigation.
We have demanded repeatedly that let's have an open inquiry into the 2020 elections and the violence that followed it.
Stay with me.
Look at Sabelugu.
No, hold
Go
on.
to Sabelugu.
Look at Odododo. I have doctor.
So there is no way anybody can convince me that this election was peaceful. And for that matter, nobody did anything wrong. And the Electoral Commission cannot take responsibility
for what happened. You made an important
happened.
point about the audit. Let me put that to Dr. Kojo Asante. We are 10 months in. The EC is still trying to justify what happened. Is there a need for some independent probe into the conduct of the election, such as I know Kodeyo had done at that meeting in Adan? Some independent, state-backed inquiry into the entire elections, the lives that were lost, etc., possibly to lay this to rest?
No, I don't. I mean, okay, let me deal with a few things. I think we have to be very, very careful in our quest to, state our claims about the conduct of the elections and the outcomes. Because, elections, you can create an environment where everything can be manufactured, and an environment where all kinds of things can happen, and that the experience that any voter has is basically an illusion, and therefore you lose complete confidence in the process. In spite of all the challenges that we have with our elections system as it is quite robust. If you make a claim that 1 million ballot boxes were printed and somehow distributed throughout all the polling stations, I don't know what, 33,000 something polling stations through some process of ballot stuffing, where in all of these places you have NDC, party agents there in the process they would have prepared for this election. And somehow, in a very competitive election where every time these two parties go to the polls, anybody can lose. And that the MPP would have gotten away with this process of stuffing all these ballot boxes. Then I think, this is really a stretch for me. Because we monitor this process. We are very much participants as the NDC and the MPP and everybody else is. And there are many people, ordinary people that participate in this process. So sometimes I think some of these claims, after the fact, it's very, very hard, to swallow, because it damages our electoral system. It damages the confidence. But as I've said, there are issues. And for me, the issues are clear if we can separate the trees from the forest. So one of the things that Mr. Tukono mentioned, which is the death of it. For me, this is the worst thing that has happened to this country, that 8 people lose their lives on election day. And it's something that if we don't learn lessons from and ensure that justice is delivered, because they died at the hands of state agents, and that is what makes it even more worrying. So somehow we have found this indecision and delay in trying to resolve this matter forgetting that even in war, people are held accountable. There are U.S. soldiers who went to Iraq and Afghanistan and places. Many of them who committed crimes have been, held responsible and in prison. So there's no excuse. See, the more we do that, then we completely undermine the institutions and the confidence in the institutions. So for me, in terms of the violence, as you said, 10 months, down the line, why have we not, brought, found justice for these people who were killed, or even come to some conclusion as to exactly what happened, what kind of actions that we have to take to ensure that this is not repeated. So on that score, we are really creating the foundations for even more violence at the next election if we keep, putting this aside, checking our responsibilities, holding people individually accountable for their actions. So I completely agree with you that this is something that the police say that they are investigating, but how long do you investigate this process for? There's videos, there are testimonies, all of that stuff. This must have been concluded by now. And also for the army. So this is really an opportunity for me to call again on the Ghana Police Service, particularly now that you have an IGP who wants to restore confidence in the police service, that this has to be concluded so that citizens know that if the people that are paid to protect them violate the law, they are also going to be held accountable. Otherwise, it would create a condition where people say, okay, next time if I'm going to this, I also arm myself. And then it creates all kinds of problems. So I really, it's just a plea that we have to do something about what happened. 8 people losing their lives is just a no-no. And we have to find ways to give justice and then learn the lessons and make sure that we don't repeat that again. And those lessons in the Code recommendations, some are very, very clear. If we are going to implement them, then we can try to avoid some of these things.
Doc, thank you very much. I'm going to take a break. When I return, I know that the NDC has started a process of electoral reform. I'll get an update on where they are with that. But also, what you just heard there, what their take is on getting justice for those who have been killed. I know their petition has been filed with SHRAD, and SHRAD is investigating this. But I also pick, just before we end, Dr. Kojo Asante's thoughts on specifically what reforms would he like to see before the next elections. We've had the EC, they say this is the best. If it was the best, is there even need for any improvement at all? What improvement will that be? Stay with me. And thank you for staying with us. Of course, today the Electoral Commission did a major press conference, put forward their own side of the story when it comes to the 2020 elections, and we're reviewing that. I still have with me in the studio the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC, Peter Bomo-Tokuno, and of course, CDD's Dr. Kojo Asante. I want to come to you on very quickly, the point made by Dr. Kojo Asante about the lack of conclusion when it comes to the deaths that were recorded in the last elections. I know the SHRAD is investigating this. What's the party's current position on this matter? Is it some other avenues you're pursuing?
Well, we take that matter very serious because mostly the people that were killed were NDC people, except the one who was killed during the registration exercise, Silas, who we don't know his political affiliation. We have taken that matter serious. And whether the MPP likes it or not, whether Jean Mensa likes it or not, we are going to get to the bottom of this matter, whether under President Akufo-Addo or a future NDC government, because we believe that nobody should lose a life. No single drop of blood is worth an election. And that is a must. That's something that we are trying to help protect the democracy that we have so much yearned to build, particularly because if we do not fix this, we can't control what will happen in 2024. because then people will feel that they are unsafe. Those who would be brought to come and protect them are the same people who are actually coming to harm them. And so they will prepare themselves and come to the polling station. And you know the implications. But I want to quickly make a point about the argument put forward by Dr. Kojo Asante on the 1 million votes, that it was not possible. You distribute 1 million votes across the country, all polling stations, we have agents. I think that is a very defective analogy of an electoral process. And I know that they didn't deploy people to all the 39,000 polling stations. They deployed just a few, but we did.
But that's his point.
Yes, but we did.
Yeah, but that's his point.
Yes, and the point we are making is that it is not everywhere they will put those ballot sheets in the ballot box. And if you have followed elections very well and you know elections in this country, you would know that ballot stuffing is real, because the electoral process is in such a manner that when the ballot papers find their way into the box, nobody can find a way to say this is invalid ballot paper.
As for suspicion, we all have
unless perhaps they would propose.
As for suspicion,
unless we are proposing that from today onwards, when we go for elections and it gets to the counting, we should have a scanner that will check the validity of the ballot papers, so that if you pick one and you say this is John Mahama, you scan and make sure that it is valid. Then you pick the next one, you scan and make sure it is valid. I think this is something that is workable, that we should look at. Until we have that, nobody can discount the fact that there could be ballot stuffing. In this election, there was real ballot stuffing. We came head on. There's
no evidence.
No, Evans, I'm giving you further evidence. Are you aware that 3 days to the election on Friday?
Is this evidence to support ballot stuffing?
Yes, ballot stuffing.
In the ballot box?
Evans, you may want to relax and listen to what I'm saying.
Briefly, because of time.
The law, CI 127, tells us how the pink sheet should look like, the statement of poll. And every content on the pink sheet or the statement of poll, how it should look like. Are you aware that on the Friday before the Monday of the election, we found out that the pink sheet that have been deployed to the various electoral areas, to the various district offices, had no column for the BVD device verification, the total number of people who have gone through the BVD.
Is that your evidence for ballot stuffing?
This is our trump card for indicating that our elections have been peaceful, credible. And I saw you mentioning the number of people who were verified by the BVDs. But on the face of the pink sheet, that was not there. So last minute, what the Electoral Commission did was that they asked their directors to go and get a stamp and put it there so that they can record the BVD devices. From our audits that we did, almost half of the pink sheets that came in did not have any number at all.
But very quickly, give me an update. Just for sake of time. Give me an update.
If you had allowed me to precipitate this point, which is most important, very good. If you do not have the total number of people who went through the BVD device, every record that you put on the sheets cannot be counter-checked, whether there is overvoting or not, because it is the number of people who went through the BVD device who should reflect the total number of votes that you have counted.
Very quickly.
But in cases that you don't have that number, you can just part any number that you want.
Give me a quick 30 seconds update on your attempt to get some reforms. Why are you with that?
Well, I mean, we put a team of experts together. We came up with a very solid, robust reforms, as you know, most of the groups that we have engaged have put it. And we submitted to the Electoral Commission. The reforms report was divided into 3 sections. One section that is supposed to be handled by the Electoral Commission, the other by the legislature, and the other side by government. So we have given every responsive institution their copies. Electoral Commission is having their copy. I mean, media houses, you have had your fair share of the reports. But we got a stinker once again from the Pedestrian Electoral Commission. And I am beginning to feel that we have a group of political miscreants put at the Electoral Commission.
So where are you now with that process?
Who came to tell us?
I mean, we know what happened.
Well, they came to tell us that we should come to IPAC and come and discuss.
Yeah, you're not going to go to IPAC.
Last time, they invited us for IPAC. And the agenda was completely different from the electoral.
But so where are you now with it? Are you going to go to IPAC or you abandon?
Our case is that it is not about going to IPAC.
Okay.
You see, we have made some specific demands, which Dr. Kojo Asante agrees with us that it will help fix the problems in our electoral.
So I just want to know the update where you are now with the process.
Our work is done.
Okay.
It is left with adoption.
Okay.
So we have given it to the.
Are you going to make another attempt to give to EC?
No, we don't need to make another attempt. You see. We are all in this ship together. Okay. We either survive or sing together. Okay. What we are saying is that for us to protect our democracy, these are the things that we have to do. We have left a copy in Parliament, and I believe that Parliament will look at it where they have to do it.
Give me.
But Electoral Commission will have to take this reform serious.
Okay,
let
me give 30 seconds to Doc. I mean, what are the top few reforms you want to see for the next elections?
Well, I think, as I said, for me, the two big areas are the collation center. You know, because we created 10,000 new polling stations, you have now more presiding officers going to the collation stations, particularly in urban areas where the number of polling stations in the constituency could be as many as 100, 120, 150. You have all these people with their equipment all going to the polling station, a collation center, and often after 5, we've talked about how can we close early, for instance. Can we ensure that we are actually scanning the pink sheets, digitalizing them, so that all this issue about the pink sheets, correction, all of these things that happen at the collation center, we can address. There are many things we can do, even in terms of elaborating the laws for how you correct a mistake, because there's too much discretion in that kind of process, so that everybody understands what exactly you have to do. If we can, I think, look at those kinds of things, we really can make a big improvement in the electoral process.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm pretty sure we have not seen and heard the last of this. Enjoy the rest of the evening.